Good morning again, and still congratulations to everybody who's here and has their alarm on their phone, so you didn't have any opportunity to forget whatever that all the other people who are going to be showing up in a little bit. I don't know, it's probably nobody in 2026, but so glad you're here. Welcome. We are finishing up today this series on God's will for your life. Of course, every message, every weekend on some level here is about being more of who God created you to be and living the life that He has for you. But this has been a little more specific, and specifically about where we find the words or the phrase God's will in the Bible. So a little bit less about what job do I take or where do I go to college. And so a lot of it has been a lot more tangible and a lot more very clear and very explicit. And so it's been good. We've talked about it's God's will for you to be transformed by changing the way you think, to be holy, to be thankful in all circumstances. I liked that one. My mom even emailed me, said she liked that one. And now today we are finishing up with one last one. And this one, though, boy, if you thought be holy was hard, this one might be legitimately impossible. And part of the reason that this is impossible is because the way it's worded, it does not depend completely on you. And the part that does not depend completely on you, in fact, has to do with ignorant people saying foolish things. Now, that makes this a little bit hard to preach and maybe a little bit hard to accomplish, because I don't know about you, but sometimes it feels to me like the ignorant things that are said, the foolish things that are said by ignorant people can be just about infinite. But I will also tell you that God and I are in perfect lockstep on this. I would love to see this happen just like He would. And so let's, even if we can't get to 100%, let's try and make whatever progress we can. So here we go. This is from 1 Peter 2:15 for today. It is God's will. What? That your honorable lives should silence those ignorant people who make foolish accusations against you. In other words, shut up the haters. It's really what it says, isn't it? What's the problem with haters? What's the difficulty, though, is haters going to hate. I used to always think that was kind of like a silly, just throwaway line. It's kind of profound, right? What it means is that it doesn't even matter how great you are or how unhate-worthy you are. Whatever you do or say, it's not going to make a difference because they're haters. That's what they do. They're going to hate. It's really more about them than it is about you. So before we get to you and me and what we deal with in our life, though, let's take a minute here and ask some questions and go through some things that you've probably never thought about, at least in these terms. And the reason I suggest that is because I had never thought about some of these things in these terms until I was working on this message. So that's kind of fun for me, at least. But always a good idea when we're reading something in Scripture is to think about and ask, all right, like what's actually going on in this sentence? Peter is writing this as a letter, sort of an open letter to believers in Jesus in various places in the Roman Empire, like Turkey, Greece, places like that, what we would call them today. But it's not to Jewish believers in Israel. It's to people living in the greater Roman Empire. What were specifically the foolish accusations that ignorant people were making to those believers in Jesus at that time and in that place? Well, of course, it's impossible to exactly know what Peter's thinking of when he writes this, but there are some very well documented, clear accusations that were made against the early believers in Jesus in that time and place. And here's one: cannibalism. But you didn't think that you were going to be talking about cannibalism this morning at church. I'll bet nobody's ever accused you of cannibalism. I'll bet you've never even thought about it. But if you do, it does kind of make sense how this could happen, right? There's groups of people that are meeting and taking the body and blood of a person who was killed and consuming them. Of course, we understand that as communion or the Lord's Supper. But if you're a little bit ignorant, these people are ignorant, right? Well, you see how maybe that could be misunderstood into something like that. Maybe even more wild. They were also accused of atheism. What? The atheists are the ones against us. We're the opposite of atheists. We're the theists. We're the enemies of the atheists. But again, this wasn't written to North America 2026. This was written to the greater Roman Empire, first century, where most people worshipped many, many gods. And so as believers in Jesus, they would worship, of course, only the one true God. So then people would think, well, why aren't you worshiping the gods? You must be atheists. It's ignorant, right? They didn't know. But you can see how something like that could happen. Now, have you or any Christian who you know or any follower of Jesus ever been accused of cannibalism or atheism because of your faith in Jesus? I'm going to say no. It's possible that sometimes maybe we say we believe in God but don't live like it. There's actually a well-known pastor who wrote a book called The Christian Atheist, but part of the reason that was an interesting, provocative title is because you know that that's impossible. That's paradoxical. You can be a not very devoted Christian. You can say you believe in God, but not let it affect the way you live or think. But there's no such thing as a Christian atheist, and nobody has ever accused you of that. I'll bet that's true. Has anybody ever accused you of cannibalism because of your faith and practice of following Jesus? I suspect not. There can occasionally be some joker somewhere who thinks they're very clever and they're going to kind of take this as some way to smear the whole thing just because they think it's dumb or whatever. But nobody is going to take that seriously. If somebody tried to put together a petition to prosecute Christians because of their cannibalism, even people who don't believe are going to say, come on, man, I don't believe like they do either. But this is ridiculous. You got to do something better than that. You are just a straight up hater. Here's what I think this means. It happened. Right? They did it. What Peter was writing to them in 1 Peter 2:15 in the first century, right? It worked. I don't know how long it took. Probably at least a couple of decades, I suspect, maybe until the time of Constantine, because it's probably really hard to run a PR campaign to correct people's mistaken views of your beliefs when your beliefs are in fact illegal. But based on the fact that we have never been accused of cannibalism or atheism, this has happened. Here's part of what I think that means. It can also happen here and now for us today. Isn't that encouraging? Isn't that amazing that in some just different ways we can be a part, we have the opportunity to be a part of doing some of these same things, because you all know that there's a very, very wide spectrum of thoughts or perceptions that people will have regarding Christians or people who say they believe in or follow Jesus, all the way from, if I asked you, I would like to think that you would say, oh yes, those are like my friends at church, the other people in this room, and they're some of the most wonderful, giving, great, just delightful people that you could ever want to be around. Some other people who maybe aren't in this room would say, oh, that's my neighbor or my coworker or my friend, my child's friend's family who's always inviting us to church, which, by the way, brief heads up, Easter is in 4 weeks from today. 4 weeks. So let's be thinking and praying about who can we bring for Easter. It's going to be amazing. They'll be so glad that you brought them and have such a great time, and God will bring the bigger story through you in them. But that could be one. Other people, maybe it's perceived to be a voting block that you either vote with or against. Some other people may think of just kind of backwards, uneducated, maybe good-hearted, but really just foolish people. Others may think of a guy on a street corner with a bullhorn and a sign telling everybody they're going to hell. Others may think of just generally uptight, judgy hypocrites. Some people may just think of pastors or leaders who end up embezzling money or even more unmentionable things that land them in the news and in jail and say, see, that's what they're all like. They're all the worst. Or there's a broad spectrum. I'm sure I've missed some, but probably legitimately all with a little bit of truth and some untruth. So how do you as an individual or us as a community, how do we silence the foolish accusations of ignorant people. Here's probably the first reaction. Here's probably what most people do, or what might even be natural, if you think about it as natural, is when somebody attacks you, well, you lash out and attack back. For sure, that's what I think most people around us do, maybe even without thinking about it. And this is just, a lot of the time, the immediate response is to go right back after them. Someone says, well, Christians are all just hypocrites, right? That can be pretty common if you poke your head into particular corners of our society. Then here's what you do is you say, well, that's rich. Yeah, coming from somebody who, and then whatever you have. And very conveniently, there is always something. So if you really start to look for it, you can probably get pretty good at finding it and picking it out. And so maybe you say, this is just the most kind of benign thing that I can think of is, that you coming from someone who, like, you celebrate Christmas but don't even believe in Jesus. You just take the parts you like and then leave out the ones you don't. You're the hypocrite. Again, fairly, hopefully benign response. This is, of course, you guys, you see this all the time in our society. Politically, do you ever notice that there's very little time spent talking about policy and a whole lot of time talking about how bad the other person or the other group is? And isn't it so convenient, once again, that there is always, whoever it is that you want to not like or disagree, but there's always tons of material. I don't ever think I've seen any evidence of a political campaign or a debate or an ad where they say, the other candidate, really smart person, really thoughtful, good-hearted. I would definitely let them date my sibling, but guess we're just going to have to go with, I think our policy is a little bit more effective. Never really hear that. So I love that if this is the only verse in the Bible that you have ever come across, or the only one that shows up in a message like today, it is as clear as can be that that is not an option that Peter leaves open for us, that it is with your honorable lives, not your dishonorable words, not the bad in somebody else. It's the good in you expressed in your actions. That is a 180-degree turnaround already from probably what's natural and normal. I think, if we just did this, this would make an enormous difference. This is way back, probably 25 years ago, early in our marriage. There was some time, I don't even remember what it was, but I did something wrong, or said something wrong, or didn't do something right. It's a long time ago. I just remember kind of the dynamic that went around this, right? And so this isn't a story of like Ross does things right. If Ross had done things right, there wouldn't even be a story. But I did something dumb, whatever it was, and Laura was mad. And so she came to talk to me, and she was mad. She was also right. And so I acknowledged it, and I apologized. She wasn't ready for that. And I remember her, she said all of this, probably not in these exact words, but pretty exactly. She's like, well, I worked through all of the things that you were going to say about how you weren't wrong, or it wasn't your fault, or it was because of something else. And I had all the arguments to shoot down your weak justifications, but now, like she was still frustrated, right? Because an apology doesn't make the frustration just evaporate. Now she's like, I don't really know what to do. Like she came in for a fight, but there was no fight. And those were accusations that really were legit. So is there anybody you can think of, in sort of a public eye person? You can say Jesus, but he's kind of his own category, I think. Is there anybody who you can think of who there's really nothing negative to say about? Is there anybody you can think of that if someone says, oh man, this is the person that I really have an issue with, that anybody around is going to say, that person? Man, you are just a straight up hater. I asked Google or AI or whatever, and not only did it give me no names, it specifically said, no, there is nobody. I wasn't completely satisfied with that, so I thought about it for a little bit, and I actually came up with 3 names. I'll give them to you in the order that they came to me. The first was Mother Teresa. If you don't know, she spent her life under the auspices of the Catholic Church, ministering and caring to impoverished street children in Calcutta. There's nothing bad to say about Mother Teresa. But just to cover my tracks, and really because I wanted to prove AI wrong and tell you all that it was wrong, I went to her Wikipedia page so I could say, see, there is no tab for controversy, and guess what? AI was right. There was a tab for controversy. But it was so weak and so ridiculous. I mean, there wasn't much there, but really, here's the biggest part was there was a quote from a well-known atheist. I'll read it so I get it right, because, I mean, she said, she spent her life opposing the only known cure for poverty, which is the empowerment of women. Like, she just loved and cared for kids, man. Like, how hard can you roll your eyes? Like, you're going after Mother Teresa, of all the billions of people on the world, including yourself, and you're upset with Mother, like, man, straight up hater. How about Billy Graham? When I was in junior high, I had a good friend who he and his family were non-church people, kind of borderline, like, anti-church people. Like, not really, like, bad about stuff, but they kind of did edge that way. And then there were a couple high-profile televangelist scandals where, you know, now everything Christian or church or Bible looks really bad. And it's you know, if you remember those, like the Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, and I think there was another one going back there. And this is junior high, so really probably both of us, most of our views are coming, it's really our parents talking through us. But I remember him saying, you know what, the only one we have any respect for is Billy Graham. At least he doesn't go around begging people for money. Well, I went to his Wikipedia page, and in fact, there was a section on controversial beliefs. There was no specific controversy, but controversial beliefs. Well, you look at it, and most of the criticism actually was from other Christians. And then, just in all seriousness, you cannot possibly have views or even not have views on something without someone getting upset about it. You just really can't make all of the people happy all of the time. But Billy Graham, all he did was just humbly and graciously point people to Jesus. Who? Anyone who would come out or listen. And if you didn't want that to be you, he was really easy to avoid. You just don't go to the stadium or turn the TV channel. Man, Billy Graham was nobody's problem. Last one, and pretty interesting, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who, of course, during his lifetime, faced overwhelming hatred and controversy. A couple of years ago, we went and visited Memphis because we make bad decisions. But we went to and, in fact, stood in the place where he was standing, where somebody went very, very far out of their way to end his life. Absolutely. He was hated and controversial during his lifetime. How about now? Like, historically, not very long later, nobody has anything bad to say about Martin Luther King Jr., and there is nothing about controversy on his Wikipedia page, interestingly. Now, I do know that there are some very real people in our very real world who would go after him, but man, doesn't that just about prove the point? Like, man, you got something bad to say about Martin Luther King Jr., you are just picking up and wearing the badge of hater. Like, you got to go figure some stuff out. Go touch grass, take a nap. You have a you problem, not a him problem. So I remember a conversation that took place in seminary. I think it was in preaching class, and a guy preached a little mini sermon, and then we talked about it. That was what we did. And the guy, I think he actually I think he actually referenced Mother Teresa specifically in saying that, hey, you know what, these people, they're no different from you. You're just like them. You can do all the things that they do. Isn't that encouraging? And then they got done and someone said, no, that's not encouraging at all. I'm here trying to take this little step that's in front of me that I'm struggling with, and you're telling me I'm supposed to be like some of the most remarkable people who have ever lived? No, that's horribly discouraging. And I kind of thought they both had certain points, really. And so what if we can kind of bring the good of these together? Let me suggest this, that most of us will never have the platform or influence of a famous person. However, what if you could be the Mother Teresa of your neighborhood? I think all the kids around know that you're the person who loves them and cares for them. And when you're there at the bus stop with your kids, all the other kids, they just know that you're someone who they could go to and things would be good. Well, you could do that, and who's going to hate you for that? What if you could be the Billy Graham of your workplace, by which I don't mean the person who awkwardly forces Jesus into every conversation, and then whenever someone sees you coming, they immediately have something really important the other direction. I just mean someone who, everybody knows that you're about Jesus, but you do so in such a way that even the office atheist says, oh yeah, I mean, good guy, great coworker, I really like talking to him. We have good conversations about, religion or anything else, but I never feel like he's selling me something or like I'm being attacked. I don't want to go to church, but if I did, I'd probably see where he goes. Like if someone did have a problem and you get hauled into HR, they'd sit you down, they'd say, come on, man, we know this person's just trying to cause trouble. You just back off, leave out the Jesus when they're around. Everybody else thinks you're fine. Well, you'll probably never preach before packed out stadiums, but you maybe could do that. Or if you could be the MLK of your social media circles, standing for what is right, but without hatred or violence. The odds on you leading a nation or worldwide movement are very, very low, but you can do what you can do in the place and the sphere where God has placed you. And maybe these are silly, I don't know. You're not called to be anybody other than who you are. But what if the ignorant accusations were silenced by our honorable lives and not our defensive, reactive attacks? How great would it be if when people complained about Life Point Crossing, here's what they had, is a bunch of do-gooders. Right, which, all right, that has a negative connotation when you say it like that. But if that was really the worst thing you could, they're just going to be a hater. What if in the office, here's what annoyed people about you, is that you just can't have any just regular office gossip when they're around. Look, it helps me get through my day to bash on Jill over there because we don't like her. But then whenever she comes, she's going to pipe in and just say something nice. Just let us be petty and mean. Well, that'd be a big win, right? It is God's will for you, for your honorable lives, to silence the ignorant people who make foolish accusations. It almost seems like it's assumed there's going to be some people who say dumb stuff. All right, well, God clearly stated will is not that you shut them up by showing them that they're the dumb ones and they're the ignorant ones, that they're the hypocrites. It's by living honorable lives. I don't ever remember hearing about Mother Teresa lashing out at everyone. She just loved kids. I don't ever remember Billy Graham saying how stupid it was to not believe in Jesus. He just pointed to Jesus. MLK obviously had overwhelming opposition that he fought against. But by all accounts, he did so explicitly and intentionally without hatred or violence. And if you don't want to follow one or any of them, then that's fine. Just follow the Jesus that they were following, maybe even better. This is God's will for you. That He transforms you into a new person by changing the way you think. That you be holy and so avoid sexual sin. To be thankful in all circumstances, man, and to shut up the haters. I hope none of those are surprising to you, but challenging, yeah. You take the challenge? Hey, God's Spirit's with you. And this is the expressly stated will of God in your life. Will you do it? Will you decide that whatever it is, maybe this is exactly what you've been praying about. God, will you just tell me, just show me what is it that you want me to do, and I'll do it. Here you go. And it is not unsure. New series next week on Don't Take the Bait. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much that you make so much so clear that maybe we don't know always clearly for sure what job to take or what car to buy or what socks to put on, but that we know how to live our lives, how to conduct ourselves as your people, your children, your ambassadors in this life that you've given us here. And still praying if you're here and maybe you've never taken that first step to trust in Jesus and become a forgiven adopted child in his family. Today is your day and your moment is right now. Every one of us has sin in our lives. This is not only the fodder for every sort of political attack ad you've ever seen. This is core Christian doctrine, and we know it's true. There have been things that were wrong. We knew they were wrong. We did them anyway. That's sin, and God, as the just judge, cannot just pretend that nothing happened. That would make him a horrible, unjust judge, which nobody would want. But a human being can do absolutely nothing to satisfy justice for the God who created him in the first place. But that's why Jesus came, lived a sinless life, and then his death on the cross was him satisfying justice for everyone who would believe in him. He takes our sinfulness, we take his righteousness, and you become a forgiven, adopted child in his family. If that's you, just right where you sit, you can pray, you can say out loud, or even just in your heart to God, if you're here in person or online, say, God, I believe that Jesus Christ came and died and resurrected so that I could be forgiven and be adopted as a child in your family. Please come into my life. Forgive me and adopt me. Begin to make me into the person you created me to be, and give me the life that you have for me. If that's your first time with something like this, a commitment, it's not the words or the prayer that saves you. It's that you put your faith in Jesus. God's grace comes to you through that, and you are a new spiritual creature in him. Will you please let somebody know is the next best thing you can do. If there's a friend that brought you, or you can talk to the person at the point, that's just the corner in the lobby, let them know the decision you made. They'll take your information. We'll be able to follow up, or if you're watching online, send us a message. And we are so excited about what God's doing in people's lives. For those of us who are here, we've been following Jesus. Whether it's something specifically for today or something from whatever message in this series, everybody has a step forward. Everybody has a next step to take in being the person who God created you to be. What is it for you? Will you commit right now between yourself and the Spirit of God that it might be scary, it might be difficult, maybe you don't want to, but that what you do want to do is live for him and be who he's created you to be? Will you make that commitment? And Father, we ask that your Spirit would be actively, powerfully at work in each one of us, making the Sunday morning commitments into real Monday through Saturday life change. And when we know that it will result in both our good and your glory. In the name of Jesus Christ.